Email retrieval protocols, EE586, final presentation, Charles Armstrong and Jim Cochran. Email accounts form a significant portion of internet traffic. Sending email most often uses SMTP. Receiving email, that is transferring email from the mail server to the client, can use either Post Office Protocol, POP, or Internet Mail Access Protocol, IMAP. In implementing an email server or client, or even just configuring an email client, it may be necessary to select between POP and IMAP based upon system or implementation constraints. Features of POP. Email is stored on client machine and deleted from mail server once delivered. Significantly reduces mail server storage requirements, but increases those requirements for mail client machines. Users can manage their email locally. Constant internet connection is unnecessary. It's only required for sending and receiving new email. Email traffic is not size limited, less complex to implement when compared with IMAP. Features of IMAP. Mail is stored on the mail server. Email receives the same backup service as the other data on the email server. All accessing devices will see the same email data, as any alterations will immediately update the image on the mail server. Client device is not burdened with storing email data. IMAP includes individual message status checking and searching. All changes to email require an active internet connection. Trace collection of internet usage data. This project focuses on the nature and amount of internet traffic generated by client-server interactions while performing routine email tasks using POP and IMAP. These tasks include the following: checking for newly received emails, sending and deleting mail, marking mail as having been read, creating or modifying email folder system, and transferring mail between folders. This chart gives a Wireshark trace listing for POP3 internet traffic. POP traffic interpretation. In the captured session shown previously, the following commands are issued by the client. CAPA requests list of capabilities supported by the mail server. AUTH initiates the authentication process with the mail server. STAT requests list of capabilities supported by the mail server. LIST returns the message number and size of current mail messages. UIDL requests a directory listing from the mail server. RETRN retrieves the mail item specified by N from the mail server. QUIT terminates the current session and saves changes. This chart shows the internet traffic trace under the IMAP protocol. IMAP traffic interpretation. In the captured session shown previously, the following commands are issued by the client. EHLO requests the initiation of a session with the mail server. AUTH initiates the authentication process with the mail server. Mail from initiates a new mail transaction with the server and reinitializes its state, in addition to supplying the sender's email address. RCPT2 provides the mail server with the email address of the recipient. Data initiates the transfer of the message contents to the email server.
So for our experiment, or I guess our project, we had to do 2 experiments to measure the metrics that we promised. Our first experiment measured the speed and reliability. So how we did that is by sending 3 different message types 10 times each using both IMAP and POP3. One was just a single sentence in an email, so it's less than a kilobyte of data. Another one was about 5 megabytes of data, and the final one was 18 megabytes of data. The reason those data file sizes were chosen is the first one is closer to just sending normal messages between people, so just like a typical conversation. 5 megabytes is about the halfway mark between what the maximum size is and what the minimum size is, and the 18 megabyte mark is as close as we can get to with the fact that data plays after you send it across emails. That's as close as you can get to maximum data size, at least on the email servers we were using. We rented a email web server to do all of this. Originally tried to just send emails and then retrieve them using PopTook and IMAP, but the bigger email providers like Outlook and Google encrypt all their data, so when you load it up into Wireshark, you don't really have a way to decrypt it and know what's being sent. After the data was collected, we found these results here. So we got the time it takes to send a file and the error rates of each file size by their protocol type. So looking at the first graph on the top, we can see that between the two larger file sizes, POP3 was actually slower than IMAP in sending the files, but for the less than a kilobyte file size, it was actually slightly faster than IMAP. And in terms of error rate, IMAP was generally better. It had a lot less error. So for our second experiment, we had to measure resource utilization. So to do that, we just measured network congestion across the network when that like IMAP and POP3 just naturally generate over time. So the graph you're going to see is going to be about a minute increments, and it's going to say the amount of packets generated by each. Good to go. So this is the results of that. We can see that generally IMAP generates more network congestion than POP3, except for at some point POP3 generated a lot more. I looked at the data, but I'm not really sure why that's the case. But in terms of other resources, POP3 also makes you store the data locally, like the emails locally, so you're using memory while IMAP does not do that. So in conclusion, so first we're going to start with IMAP. It takes less time, has higher reliability, and requires less storage to do that. Generally, that's going to be the optimal choice for most people that are not really prone to error loss from client devices that that get their memory wiped or anything because data is stored remotely. That does mean that IMAP is typically harder to IMAP is harder to implement because it is more complex in that way. And network congestion does get a little bit worse when you start doing things like looking at emails, reading emails, and leaking emails and things like that. So for POP3, generally it's worse, but it does enforce less network congestion, I guess. You can also use it offline because all the emails stored locally, and whenever you access them, you're not going to generate more network traffic. But it does tend to be slower with higher sizes of emails and tends to generate a lot more error than IMAP. So in conclusion, generally people are going to want to use IMAP. It seems to be more reliable and faster, and it requires less resources by the client. POP3, I think it could be used for special circumstances where you're trying to, in a mostly offline setting, or if you want to work, like if you have a program that wants to work on the data that is stored, you can set that up automatically to do that. And also, most people typically have multiple devices. I think most people have at least a laptop or a phone or a computer and a phone, so you can only use You can only view an email on one of those. If you use Copy with IMAP, you can use both, which is generally more preferable. And any questions?